We do have a guest from the Beware of Bulldogs podcast, Caleb Nale. Caleb, thanks so much for taking the time today, man.
Oh, thanks for having me, guys. Sorry I didn't wear the cool shirt and the red. I'm bland, brown.
Next
gray.
time.
Next time. I'm a big neutral tone guy.
Caleb, obviously Fresno State starting the season 2-0. They just got finished with a double overtime game this past weekend. This is a team with the second longest active win streak in the FBS. Just what have you made of this Fresno State team thus far?
We're really happy here in Fresno. However, after a double overtime victory against Eastern Washington, we're a little skeptical. We would like to see a little more consistency. We thought the defense would be a little better. We allowed Purdue 35 and 31 against Eastern Washington. Not what we're expecting. So, like you guys, you have new players, a lot of questions to be answered. Not really sure where your expectations should be. Now, we're coming into game 3. We've seen you guys play twice. You've seen us play twice. I think now is the time where we start to have our questions answered. Mm-hmm. And hopefully it's in our favor this weekend. So,
obviously, as far as offense is concerned with you guys, it kind of starts with Mikey Keene, a guy that people here that if they've been paying attention to Arizona football might know, a Phoenix area native. What kind of quarterback should we expect to be seeing? How is he going to give ASU's defense fits?
Yeah, I would recommend go watching the Purdue highlights. That's probably more what you're going to get. The playbook was pretty bland against Eastern Washington, but I would say he's similar build and similar style to Jake Haener, what we had last year. I don't believe he has the arm that Jake Haener had. He put a lot of air under the ball against Eastern Washington, allowing time for defenders to get there. Now the decision-making is coming along. We have a new offensive coordinator. He's learning the playbook. He's still getting to know the wide receivers. I'm hoping, and you can see he's learning and trying to take advantage of what's given to him, but we're hoping for quicker decisions, hitting wide receivers right out of their break, because he's been a second late. So he can move. We haven't seen a whole lot. They ran a couple RPO stuff against Purdue, but you can expect a tough quarterback that I think is improving and learning the playbook. And hopefully he has a little bit more zip on the ball Saturday than he did last week.
Yeah, for all the ASU fans, it feels like just getting a look at Mikey Keene, just watching his tape a little bit, he is somewhere in between Trenton Bourguet and Drew Pine, just in terms of play style. He's an efficient quarterback. Clearly, he's helping the Fresno State offense put up 36.5 points per game. Outside of Keene, how is this team finding ways to score that many points? Is it more the offense, or is it more the defenses that they're going up against?
Well, that's a really good question. I think it's the offense. I would say it's the offense. The passing game has been our savior. The only problem is we have about 2 weapons in the passing game. That's our tight end, Trey Watson. I think he's an absolute stud. He's open most of the time when you watch him play. Eric Brooks is our wide receiver. He had a big game against Purdue. It took him some time to get going against Eastern Washington, but he's a threat. But other than that, our wide receiver core is pretty small. We are quick, but we're small. Yeah. And so we rely on good route running and speed. And I think that's why it's taken Mikey some time to get used to those things. When it comes to offensively in the running game, we have a big back, Elijah Gilliam. Didn't do much against Eastern Washington. So we're really relying on our passing game. And because Mikey hasn't been consistent throwing the deep ball, I would say kind of similar to Rashada, our short intermediate passing game is really what's moving the ball and scoring points.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you bring up a receiver like Eric Brooks. I believe he's listed at like 5'7", which is a little bit smaller for a guy at this caliber, but he reminds me a lot of what ASU just faced in a guy from Oklahoma State, Brennan Presley, that they kind of move all over the field. He's their speed guy that can kind of do it all. Just from that perspective, how does Fresno State use him? Do they use him in a traditional way, or do they like to mess around with him on offense?
They use him. Well, they'll move him outside and in the slot. The guy you're going to want to keep an eye on is Jalen Gill. They will use Jalen Gill in the backfield. He's another wide receiver that's under 6 feet. We'll put it that way. We have 3 of them on our 2 deep and that are starting. But anyways, so Jalen Gill is a guy you want to keep an eye on. They'll move him around, do different things with him. And then the other wide receiver is Mac Delana, short guy, who most of the time is going deep. So he's speedy. But keep an eye on Jalen Gill. Eric Brooks is your more traditional slot wide receiver.
Yeah.
And then like other side of the ball, defense. We talk a lot about the offense. ASU hasn't necessarily been up against the toughest defenses, but also hasn't really done much against those defenses. What should we be looking for your defense from the Fresno State defense?
Well, okay, what I expect is, and what I would like to see, is a lot of pressure on Rashada.
Yeah.
Now that could be completely different from what we get. Our linebacker room is so deep. I would say probably one of the deepest in the country. We also have 2 corners in Cam Lockridge, who only played half a game against Eastern Washington, but Cam Lockridge and Carlton Johnson, who are ranked at the top in the Mountain West. So I really like our cornerbacks. The question mark becomes, can the D-line get pressure? We do have one guy, Johnny Hudson, who's beat up a little bit. He didn't practice this week, but he didn't leave Eastern Washington with an injury. So I think it's just precautionary, and he's just sitting out this week in practice. But then the biggest question mark is at the safety position. So you have Dean Clark, who's a stud safety, transfer from Kent State. But the other safety position has been inconsistent, I would say. We've had 3 guys coming in and out, getting lots of reps in the past 2 games, and we've been getting beat deep. I mean, Eastern Washington had guys running free deep, and if Rashada and your boys in the wide receiver room can take advantage of that, I'm a little worried. And we have a segment called "Gonna Make You Sweat," and that's what's making me sweat. If we can't guard one-on-one, and our safeties are getting beat deep, I think there's a possibility there that Arizona could take advantage of that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, because obviously that's been a big topic of conversation here, is them being a little conservative and not really being aggressive attacking downfield. So it'll be interesting. And then also our offensive line is pretty beat up in their own right. So that battle in the trenches is going to be pretty interesting as well.
Well, that's going to be interesting because, I mean, you bring up Fresno State and the idea that you want to see them kind of get pressure. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but they only have 1 sack so far through these first 2 games. Just been unable to actually get these quarterbacks moving around.
Yeah, it's been frustrating to say the least. We were talking about it on our game preview, is does Fresno State blitz and create the opportunity for Rashada to roll out and run, because he's a good runner. I've seen him run a couple times. He can do it. Or do we, not blitz and contain, which I don't want to see that. I'd like to see us bring pressure, and then by bringing pressure, are we getting beat deep? So, there's so many question marks on this defense. Our expectations were top 25 in the country because we ended the season so well last year. Almost all of our returners are coming back, or that's repetitive, but you know what I mean. Other than Evan Williams, who's at Oregon now, but we don't speak that name here anymore. So, it's 35.5 points a game is not what we were expecting. We're looking to turn it around this week and in the future.
Yeah, I am interested because you look at this win streak, and Kenny Dillingham has brought it up earlier in the week, obviously second behind only Georgia. This win streak goes back, obviously, to last season when Fresno State finished the year with a dominant win over Washington State, which is funny because Washington State's defensive coordinator is now Arizona State's defensive coordinator. And it didn't look like Fresno State had any issues dealing with that defense last year. What from that bowl game kind of, I guess, gives you confidence, or I guess what worked well in that bowl game to kind of beat a Brian Ward defense that revolves around getting the quarterback off balance and then just chaos?
Yeah, I mean, so we're talking offensively here, yes?
Yeah,
I'm thinking, so in that game, Jordan Mims, who's now on the practice squad with the Saints, he had a huge game against Washington State running on the ground. And that's what I'd love to see. Fresno State, if you talk to the older guys, Fresno State is known as smash mouth football. Anybody, anytime, anywhere. And I'd like to see that. Elijah Gilliam is a big back. He likes to bang. And if we can establish that, I believe that will open up our short intermediate passing game, which I have seen Arizona State to be susceptible to against Oklahoma State. But I would love to play smash mouth football with our big running back, which I know you guys have a big running back that I like a lot. But if I did not know he was the DC at Washington State, but because Jordan Mims was so successful, shoot, let's run the ball, man.
Yeah. I mean, that'll be interesting because at least in the first half of games, and Sean, you can speak to it, this Arizona State defense has been pretty resilient in terms of shutting down opposing run games. And then you get to the second half of games, then it's a lot
more like last year where they were not great against the run.
It's just going to depend, I think, on what ASU offense you get. I think that's where the game's going to be won because you look at both these teams. Fresno State offensively seems like they're finding a way to click. ASU defensively feels kind of the same, even though on paper it doesn't necessarily look that way, especially that Oklahoma State box score. It's leaned, I guess, a certain way. But ASU's offense has been a little shaky. Fresno State's defense has been a little shaky. Before we get you out of here, two things. First off, is there any major injury concerns for Fresno State going into this game? And then we can wrap things up with your prediction for Saturday's game.
Oh, boy. Well, when it comes to injuries, we just have Johnny Hudson on the D-line, who is a little banged up sitting out of practice, but I think he's going to be a go. And then Malik Sherrod, who's listed as number 1 running back, he's been sitting out of practice. He was in practice with a boot, actually. We're not sure what's wrong. No one said anything, but he started the season as a number 1, but Elijah Gilliam quickly took over against Purdue. And by the way, Elijah Gilliam's a walk-on. So I still don't think we see Sherrod, but I'm happy with our running backs situation. But I should say, who started out number 3, Devin Rivers, younger brother of Ronnie Rivers, who's with the Rams. He also had a shoulder injury, but he's feeling close to 100%. So it'll be interesting to see who takes backup reps at the running back position on Saturday. But other than that, we should be good to go. We're healthy. Mikey King's ready, and my prayer is that the O-line can hold up.
That's ours as well, Caleb. That's ours as well. Any predictions for Saturday's game?
Well, I know what is it, the spread is at -3 to the Dogs right now.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm happy to see that, but that's tough, especially for an away game for us. And with so many question marks for both teams, I'm going to take the Dogs. I'm going to take the Dogs in this one. And my prediction earlier, and you may not like this. Well, you won't like this. I've had 35-28.
35-28. Okay.
Maybe it was 21, but since
if
I'm on
our
your show, I'll
offense
give you
can
another
score,
touchdown.
if our offense can score 4 touchdowns,
That'd be nice.
I'll take it. I'll take that at the very least.
It's. I mean, no pun intended. It is going to be an absolute dogfight. I think on Saturday, it's going to be a lot of fun. But Caleb, regardless, thank you so much for coming on and kind of giving us a little bit of a backstory as to what this Fresno State season has looked like thus far.
Oh, thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it. And cool setup, by the way. I really like it.
Thank you, Caleb. Thank you. Anytime, man. Anytime.